And welcome back to the channel where we talk about only good comics. I'm Brant, and this is Friday First. This is that series where we talk about those brand new #1 issues, character debuts, story arcs, and the like. This is for books that are coming out on June 11th and 12th, 2024. So, before I get into that, I do have a few books to recap, but not a whole lot. So we'll dive into all of those. There are a lot of books to talk about this week. Other than that, I think I have 10 books on the list, one honorable mention, 9 other books, and then I have a bunch of other books that are in my other anticipated. So a lot to talk about this week. I am recording this as I'm about to head off to another convention this weekend. It's not a Comic-Con or Anime Con or anything like that, though. It's a craft show setting up my wife's crochet, my wife and her sister's crochet business, and kind of doing that in Belton, Texas. So prepping for this big superhero Comic-Con in San Antonio in a couple weeks, though, and that's going to be a 4-day show. So really excited about that one, and then you'll hear more details about that one as we get closer to that. But I am trying to do more content on this channel, which I'll talk about in just a second. But let's get into those recaps from books that came out last time. So first up, I'm going to reference Scarlet issue 1 here. I'm not going to say a whole lot about this because I did another video, which I'll try to remember to link up here somewhere. And I did a solo Let's Talk video, first one I've done of those in a while. But I was excited about the book and I wanted to share my thoughts on that. I also did a short on TikTok if you want to go check that one out as well. But briefly, I love the book. I thought it was fantastic. Great spotlight on this character. Loved Kelly Thompson's writing on this. Loved Marco Ferrari's art. And it was a really solid book. I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it if you're a G.I. Joe fan or if you're enjoying anything from the Energon universe. And if you just like good spy stories and character stories, you'll enjoy this book. So check it out and check out my full review up there. Next up, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Alpha, and I'm going to put a caveat on this one as well. I've only read the main story, the first story written by Jason Aaron, the actual lead into the upcoming relaunch of the series, and just a couple of pages of the next Old Hop story. So I haven't read this full book, so keep that in mind when you're considering my thoughts on this. But that Alpha story I thought was really interesting, and it drew me completely into this new launch and makes me want to read what comes next because as we see on the cover here, we see Donatello, and this story is solely about Donatello as he's kept prisoner in this almost like zoo. But there's a darker twist to this zoo that kind of comes into play in this, and you realize that a bunch of mutant creatures are captured here, and Donatello has been here so long he's forgotten his name. So very interesting lead into this new story, and I'm really intrigued by what's going to come next. Can't speak for the rest of the book yet because I have not finished it yet, but as far as that story goes, really enjoyed that story. All right, one I did read completely, Wolverine Blood Hunt issue #1. I thought this was a really good issue. Obviously, this is a miniseries tie-in to Blood Hunt, but it's telling its own story. And if you're a Wolverine fan and you like classic Wolverine stories, you're going to love this. There are references to Wolverine's past, his very distant past, and his more recent past. And those things kind of collide with this whole vampire thing going on from Blood Hunt, but it's a solo story of Wolverine teaming up with this character Louise, who was turned into a vampire in a previous story, and they team up to take on these vampires and try to figure out why this particular group of vampires is specifically hunting Wolverine only, and why they want Wolverine to begin with. And you get your classic Wolverine inner monologue, just kind of that gruff, kind of almost bitter look on the world, and talking about his history and talking about his connections to these people and all this stuff. It's just classic Wolverine. The art was really solid as well. As far as tie-ins go, this is the kind of tie-in you like because it gives you enough of that main story, but tells its own complete story, focusing on these characters. So if you're a Wolverine fan, definitely check this one out. And finally, Ultimates, the Ultimates issue 1. This is following up from obviously the launch of this Ultimate Universe with this group of Doom, which is Reed Richards, Iron Lad, which is Tony Stark, and Sif. And then they have Thor, who's been badly injured, and Captain America, who's on ice. And they determine, obviously, you see Giant Man in there as well. They come into play. Hank and Janet come into play in this book as well. But they determine that they need to recruit more members. They have 2 years to figure out how to defeat the Maker. In the past, I've not been a huge fan of the Ultimates, but I thought this was an interesting enough take on these characters and how they come to be a team that it intrigued me enough to check out the second issue. I thought the art was really nice. The divergent stories of some of these characters, like Hank and stuff, was really interesting to see how that played out and how this version is going to be very different than the previous version of the Ultimates and the Ultimate Universe, and why they can't just make it into what it used to be or into a duplicate 616. It kind of explains all of that within the realm of this issue. There is a lot of jargon around all of that, so if that's not your thing, but it's not so deep that it takes you out of it. I don't think. I think it was an enjoyable read. And again, it got me interested enough to keep reading this series, at least for now. And that's all the recaps. So let's jump into those first issues coming out next week. First, we have our one and only honorable mention. And this is a book that you probably wouldn't expect to see on my countdown, but actually, I might check it out. This is Plastic Death and Dolls issue 1. This is a prequel to Plastic, which is a series that I believe my friend Kat Comic Uno from Comic Book Weekly read and enjoyed, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe it was Mike. One of them, I'm pretty sure read Plastic and enjoyed it, but I don't recall really. But I wanted to give it a shout out just in case. But this is the prequel to this serial killer's first kill when he was 10 years old, and kind of takes the story from there. So if you followed Plastic, you'll want to check this one out. Next up is a series also from Image called Rifters. This is issue 1, and this is about it describes it as time cop collides with law and order filtered through the stupid McSmart Salat Einstein lens of Mr. Show. So that's very descriptive on the kind of story that you're going to get. But they are basically time cops. They're traveling through time, temporal displacement and all that, temporal trips to 1920s Chicago. And the interesting thing about this, though, is they get tied up into some kind of interdimensional or intertime, transdimensional, I don't know, murder mystery crime that takes place, and they have to try to solve it throughout time. So that was enough to make it interesting to me. Before that, I was like iffy on it, but that kind of pulled me in, and I'm like, okay, that sounds kind of interesting. So that has me more intrigued and wanting to check it out. So I'm going to try out the first issue of this. Hopefully I enjoy it. This is by Brian Posehn and Joe Troman. So definitely some writing chops in the mix there. So if you are a fan of their work, you'll want to check it out as well. But interesting concept. And I'm going to give this one a possibly good, just because I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to like this one or not. So I'm going to give it a possibly good. Hopefully it, by metering my expectations, it'll raise up my enjoyment. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but we'll see. I've enjoyed other stuff Brian Posehn has been involved with, so why not check this one out as well. Keeping on this Image train, another Image series, Remote Space issue 1. This is a mini series, obviously it's 1 of 4, and this is by Cliff Rathburn. This is written in and drawn by Cliff Rathburn, and it's a sci-fi story set in 2450 as people have chosen 2 paths to kind of deal with Earth dying. One of them went to space and tied into cybernetic augmentation, and the other decided to experiment with genetic manipulation that were left behind on Earth. So you get to see both sides of this story. Very sci-fi. It sounds like a little bit of cyberpunk mixed into that as well. So the cover looked pretty interesting. Like the striking colors here, so I'm curious about it. And Cliff Rathburn is a solid, talented creator, so I'm going to check this one out, and I'm going to give this one a potentially good. Moving along to a Marvel book, we have Giant Size Daredevil issue number 1, and this sees Daredevil and maybe both Daredevils as the if I can enlarge it. The cover shows the Elektra Daredevil in there as well. Going up against Kingpin, as Kingpin is stalking the streets of Manhattan by night for some reason, and so he's coming after the Daredevils. I don't know like where this story takes place time wise. I know this book also does include a reprint, so keep that in mind. It includes a reprint of Daredevil 170 by Frank Miller, also a Kingpin story. So it's a $6.99 book for 44 pages, so keep that in mind. But I like Elektra as Daredevil, so that's the only reason I'm kind of considering this one. I'm gonna, kind of look through it and see what I think about it, because I'm not reading the current Daredevil Matt Murdock series. I've not enjoyed that, so it depends. But I'm going to give it a potentially good, just because it's a classic story, Daredevil versus Kingpin, and then you throw in Elektra in the mix. Heads up, as I get into this next book, my internet seems a little wonky. The signal's going in and out, so if this pauses or gets blurry, I apologize. Just keep that in mind. Next up on the list is Wicked Trinity issue number 1. This is from Archie Comics. This is from the Sabrina's Magical World. This is the I believe it's the, I don't know who these characters are. Actually, it says, I'm just going to read it here. Sabrina's magical nemesis, Amber Nightstone, and her sidekicks, Jade Kazan and Sapphire Gill, are intent on becoming the most powerful witches in the world. Isolated from so many around them, the three have formed a coven based on their individual needs for vengeance and true freedom. But when there is some dissent among the ranks, their small coven is threatened to be obliterated from within. So when I first heard about this book, I thought it was going to be those sisters that are in the Sabrina show on Netflix. And we've seen them in the comics as well. I thought it was going to be, and I don't know if they're sisters. Maybe this is them. I don't know who these characters are. If this is them, cool. If it's not, cool. Either way, because it's like this infighting and it might be them splitting apart, fighting against each other, that made it more of a pull for me. So, yeah, I'm going to check it out. I don't really know what to think about it. Some of these Archie, especially in this realm of the Archie books, are kind of hit and miss. But yeah, I think this one could be potentially good. So that's what I'm going to rate this one. Next, we have X-Men Blood Hunt Jubilee issue 1. This one is interesting to me because of Jubilee's past as a vampire. And obviously that's going to play into this. Obviously she's a character you want to follow into the story because of that past and that history, which created an entire event around it at one point. So there's not a whole lot to this description except for referencing that past. So I'm really curious about it, but I'm not familiar with the creative team. This is the creative team of Preeti Chittiber work at all, so I don't have any frame of reference for it, but I love the cover. That looks cool. I like Jubilee as a character, always have. So yeah, hopefully it'll be a fun little story for Jubilee, which makes sense in the scope of Blood Hunt. So I forgot to rate it almost. I'm actually going to give this one a promisingly good, just because I like Jubilee and I want to see her side of this whole thing. Keeping with X-Men, as I enter my last 3 books, we have X-Men Heir of Apocalypse. That's not true. I have 4 books left. Heir of Apocalypse. This is one I've been kind of on the fence with because it seemingly came out of nowhere. I started hearing about the Heir of Apocalypse, and I didn't understand why Apocalypse needed an heir to begin with. And I'm still not clear on what this story is alluding to, why the particular cast of characters are the potential heirs of Apocalypse. So I'm very intrigued by this, yet still tentative. But anyway, it says, for centuries, Apocalypse tested the mutants of Earth to guarantee that only the strong would survive. Now, as he takes his throne on Araco, another must rise in his place and ensure the mutants of Earth do not grow weak in his absence. So we know that 12 mutant characters, heroes and villains, have been chosen, and they will compete for the honor. I don't have the list of those characters in front of me. It looks like they are here right now. Armageddon Girl is one who I'm not totally familiar with. Cable, obviously Cypher, Emma Frost, Exodus, some strong choices there. Forge, Gorgon, Mirage, Mr. Sinister, Penance, Richter, and Wolverine, Laura Kinney are all involved in this. So interesting choice of characters there. Don't know what the story is going to be like. It's Steve Fox and Nito Diaz. Nito Diaz did a variant cover for our Curiouser series. Really enjoy his art style. Really happy that he's got this book. So curious to see what that is like. I like some of Steve Fox's writing, so we'll see what this one has in store. But for me, I'm going to give this one a potentially good, just because I don't know a whole lot about why this is even happening in the first place or why these particular characters are involved. Hopefully the story will tell us. Okay, now I'm getting to the last 3 books. So we have Batman Gotham by Gaslight, The Kryptonian Age. Now, I love the original Elseworlds Gotham by Gaslight graphic novel. I guess graphic novella, whatever it is. I really enjoyed that original one. They've tried to tell some other stories in this world. They did the animated movie. Nothing quite captured the magic of that original story. But adding in Kryptonians to the mix could do that. And I'm really curious about their inclusion in this world. I think it could be really interesting seeing them through this, medieval steampunk lens that is Gotham by Gaslight. You have Andy Diggle writing it, so that's going to be interesting as well. So I'm really curious about this one, and I'm going to give this one a potentially good, just because, again, none of them have been able to capture it quite the way that first one did, at least for me personally. But I have hopes for this one, and hopefully it will. But I'm still going to meter those expectations again with a potentially good. Next up, we have Lawful, issue number 1 from Boom Studios. This is written by Greg Pak with art by Diego Galindo, sorry. And this is an urban fantasy tale, which is right up my alley. I write an urban fantasy comic. It's a genre that I really enjoy. So this one is based on this walled city that has like these 2 kids that everything that they do, every mistake that they make, kind of slowly turns them one step closer into a monster of some sort. So it says, imperfection breeds monstrous consequences in this urban fantasy adventure with a deep social commentary, and then it references the creative team. So it's interesting what this book is going to be about, and that there's like the social commentary weaved into it, which is going to be interesting because it's called Lawful because there's in this eye of society, there's no distinction between rules and what's right. So you got this kind of dilemma of, legality versus morality kind of thing. That I guess that's the social commentary that they're going for in this book. But this cover is really striking. Really interesting that the monstrous features that are starting to appear on these 2 characters, and it just sounded like an interesting concept. Boom Studios does a lot of really strong, cool, unique books, and Greg Pak is a seasoned creator as well. So really interested in checking this one out, and I'm giving this one promisingly good. And finally, we have Scarlet Witch issue number 1. This is, of course, continuing this long run by Steve Orlando that started off with the Scarlet Witch series, went to Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver that just ended, and now we are back with Scarlet Witch. And this, it could be the biggest story told in this run yet, as Scarlet Witch comes up against this incredible, unstoppable force that threatens to destroy everything she holds dear. And it's going to be the biggest fight of her life, according to this. So it's going to be interesting to see. I have enjoyed this entire run. If you have been a fan of this run, you will absolutely want to pick this one up. If you have not, I understand, like Mike and Kat dropped off of this pretty quickly. It wasn't their thing. But for me, I've absolutely loved this run through and through, start to finish. I love the way the last one wrapped up as Magneto came in and there was like this confrontation between him and Quicksilver as he dug the knife a little bit deeper into his feelings about Quicksilver, and Quicksilver kind of digging back as to how his sister really needs him and that kind of thing. So a lot of family dynamics were explored there, but now we're taking Quicksilver out of the equation for now and focusing back on Scarlet Witch. And so yeah, it's been interesting that you start off with her starting this new life with this shop that has this door that opens and she's solving people's problems, and we introduce Darcy into the comic world and tell that story a little bit. Then you shift to this thing that involves Magneto and this letter that he left that kind of disrupts the world and of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and you have their small journey, and now you're coming back with this stronger story on Scarlet Witch as she's dealing with her stuff and fighting this big threat that is tearing down her world and everything that she's built up from the start of this run. So really great arcs in this book, in this series, if you will. So really excited about this one. Absolutely love everything before. So I'm giving this one a positively good, because every single issue of this book I've enjoyed immensely from every arc. So yeah, Scarlet Witch issue 1, that is my most anticipated of the new number 1 issues and so forth. So that's that one. All right, as promised, I'm going to share a few more most anticipated books that are not number 1 issues and the like. So first up, we have Ain't No Grave issue number 2. I really enjoyed the first issue. It didn't quite blow me away, but the storytelling styles were very similar to other books from Scotty Young, very Middle West, and I can't remember what that one book was, but anyway, it's got very similar tone to some of those stories. I talked about issue 1 on this show before, but really excited for issue 2 going forward. Next up, we have Crocodile Black issue number 2. First issue also really good as we see that maybe this kid is our killer. We don't know that for sure, but signs are pointing towards that, and it opened up this whole other side of this mystery that made it even more intriguing. So really solid first issue. Again, can't wait for the second one. Avengers number 15 continues Blood Hunt with this sub-team led by Captain America, has Hawkeye, Kate Bishop in there, various other characters, while the other team of Avengers is dealing with the vampires elsewhere, like those super vampires. This team is dealing with the ones on this helicarrier. And so the first issue, as this team came together as like kind of what do you call them, reserve Avengers, if you will, that was really fun to see them kind of how their team came to be. And then seeing them in action here, this is probably going to be a much more action-oriented affair, but I'm really excited to see the second part of this team's interaction with the vampires. Speaking of vampires, Blood Hunt issue number 3, the big cliffhanger, obviously alluded to on the cover here, of Miles turning into a vampire. Nobody knew how it happened, but it happened, and so I'm curious to see where that goes, how that's going to play into this. But so far, this event's been pretty strong for me. I've really enjoyed the first 2 issues, so I'm looking forward to the third one as well. Green Lantern issue number 12, what we've been waiting for. Star Sapphire and Green Lantern, will they, won't they? We don't know, but this has been a really, really solid and fun series as Hal Jordan has been trying to find himself again, and now we've got the Star Sapphires back in the mix. Carol, obviously, she was at the altar getting married, had just said I do, and the ring shows up, and now we're getting this story. So I cannot wait to see how that plays out, and if this marriage actually became official, what's going to happen with her and Hal, how the Star Sapphire is going to play into this whole, like, I forget what that council is called, that whole thing that's going on with the Green Lantern, with all the lanterns, the spectrum of lanterns. So it's just been a really fun series. And finally, of course, Transformers issue number 9. I talked about the Energon universe earlier in the show. This is just a fantastic rebirthing of these Hasbro properties, and Transformers again has been really good. In this particular issue, I think we're seeing more of the Cybertronian side of things and how that plays into this whole war between the Autobots and Decepticons. You see, Optimus holding the world on his shoulders, as it were, the old Atlas thing. So that is pretty cool, and this is my most anticipated book every time it comes out. So this is by far my most anticipated of the week. And that's it. That's going to wrap it up for another episode of Friday First. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it that thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more content, I am trying to sprinkle a little bit more while Comic Book Weekly is on hiatus for the summer, or the lightened schedule for the summer. So you can hit that subscribe and notification bell so you don't miss any of the content going up on the channel. Of course, you can follow me across social media at Only Good Comics, and type in onlygoodcomics.com to bring you right back to this YouTube channel where we talk about only good comics. Until next time, thanks for watching. Take care and keep reading those comics. Bye.